Joining me right now on this note from his secret Minecraft/Lego bunker is one of the most respected men in foreign policy circles, Stephen Yates. You can find him on Twitter at YatesComt. He had previously advised in the Bush administration. He also ran Radio Free Asia until he became too much of a problem for the CCP, including those moles in our government. Just like to say that out loud. Stephen, always a pleasure to see you. I got to get your reaction to that soundbite. I mean, that's bizarre. They can't actually address that right now, whether they think or that that Taliban should have a seat at the table at the United Nations. I mean, I know the UN's kind of a joke, but really?
Well, I mean, before getting to the substance of it, I mean, this is just proof positive that these guys have just been coasting through school because they've never had a hard test. They've had powder puff media coverage. We clearly don't have galaxy brains running or speaking on behalf of our government. These people are not, as you say, the sharp tool in the shed. And this is not a hard question. Last I checked, the Taliban and its affiliate organizations are still terrorist organizations. Up until this recent round of verbal gymnastics, it was pretty clear who our enemy was in Afghanistan. It was them. And so it's mind-blowing to watch all of this. But what I think America needs to understand is that these people, it's not just the president, it's not just the White House press secretary. None of these people know what they're doing, and we're paying dearly for it.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear them even flirt with the idea of giving them legitimacy. I think them not just shutting that, I mean, just looking at the semantics of it, them not shutting that down confers legitimacy by itself.
It does, but it also sort of confirms the hostage situation that they've allowed us to fall into. Why would a sentient American or free world being give any legitimacy to these people, except for the notion that you are prisoner to needing them to do something for you? Otherwise, it's really not that hard to slam the caveman mentality. They're all woke when it comes to America, but this 7th century oppression is totally cool beans if we're going to try to work out an evacuation after we pull our military out. So none of this adds up at all, but it really should be super easy to say who friend and foe is in this situation. You can, if you want, declare defeat and say, yep, they're in charge. There's nothing we can do about them being in charge. But that doesn't mean we stop being Americans. It doesn't mean we stop taking care of Americans. It's just mind-blowing that it isn't every single American in any national security competence saying, hey, Americans are at risk. We don't leave Americans behind. I mean, there's a circulation of an old West Wing episode where leftist writers for a pop show got it right. And the fake president said, we don't leave Americans behind.
And we did. Watching the ceremony at Dover Air Force Base, and I know when we last spoke, it was beginning of last week before all of this awfulness happened, before we had 13 servicemen killed. Stepping back and looking at working with a group that we were firing at 2 weeks now, going on 3 weeks prior, the idea that we were unprepared for this, or that we could not anticipate even ISIS-K coming in. We could not, and the report that showed that apparently we were offered the ability to control checkpoints like all throughout Kabul, not just at the airport. The Taliban had said, if you want to, for all intents and purposes, control the city, you can. That's on you. Otherwise, we will do it. And the way that it was presented was that we agreed on some middle ground and decided to work with them as though we could rely on their ability to process people, get them through checkpoints, and then we created this whole sitting duck bottleneck right there outside of the Abbey Gates, and then we saw that suicide bomber. This just seems like some of the worst organization. I wanted to get your thoughts on that report that came out that showed that this is actually how we were approaching processing and evacuating people there at Hamid Karzai.
Well, so much of this is wrong and has gone wrong that I think we can say with highest confidence that we have not been told the truth. I'm sure that will come as a shock to everyone to realize that we have not been told the truth. But we had no less than General Milley, who shockingly still has a job, that we don't need Bagram Air Base. We just don't need it to do what we need to do in Afghanistan. That's a 1 month or 2 month old quote. That's not Trump administration. That's not going back and trying to say, but Trump, but Trump. This was in the Biden administration, in presidential decision-making circles. We don't need this secure airbase to do what we need to do. And then we had all of these talking points by the State Department, Pentagon, and others talking about our Afghan partners. And who was that at that point? The existing government had fled. They were talking about the Taliban as their Afghan partners. And it was just as breathtaking that in a moment, a flip of a switch, all of a sudden, we are partnering with the enemy, and we're hoping it's going to come through okay. I mean, you probably have on the headlines this drone strike. Were we relying on the Taliban to give us targeting information? Were we relying on the Taliban to tell us? How do we even know ISIS-K exists? This is just a new acronym to just sort of put a Band-Aid on a bad situation and try to say, oh, well, we really messed up at an airport, but we're going to kick the crap out of this 5 letters you've never heard of before.
Yeah, you mentioned the drone strike as well, because we were told that we took out a clown car of ISIS-K members. And in fact, and now what we're hearing from Associated Press and some other foreign press on the ground is that it looks like it may have been just a car full of family members with, some toddlers and a 9-year-old, how do you make that mistake? I mean, I don't, how is that? Do we not have eyes, at least satellite eye? We can't tell the difference between 2-year-olds and 9-year-olds and grown adult male terrorists?
Well, you'd like to believe that we have eyes on target before we hit pull. And if we didn't make this mistake, put the evidence out there. Why let the Taliban and the Islamists more broadly have this propaganda victory? This is just beating America down more. And the more it happens without any rebuttal, just exacerbates the perception of total incompetence on the part of the United States and the just going shrinkage of America in the world. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Sad to watch. But, it's not like drones were a new thing. They were the fad during the Obama years.
Right.
And the other thing, if you have any compassion for the people we asked to operate this stuff, if someone was given those coordinates by error and they ended up killing a bunch of innocent people, including children, I mean, think of the life that person has to live knowing I hit the button on that on the orders of some schmoes that have just screwed everything up sideways for all this time. I mean, we're doing grave damage to our military, military in action, military recruitment, and our prestige. So all the way around, I find nothing sunny to talk about on this.
Yeah, I want to ask, we're talking with Stephen Yates. You can find him on Twitter at YatesComms. I was looking at some of the reporting on this, and I'm not quite sure how to think of it. For instance, we've talked about Panjshir Valley before. Guardian had a piece up where they said, could Panjshir Valley be Taliban's could that be the Taliban's Waterloo? Which I think seems greatly exaggerated from what I understand about the history of fighting with Panjshir Valley and their ability to actually extend their resistance beyond the geographical protection of said valley. But I wanted to get your reaction to that, because I see some people within, just here and there, some surrogates and some, people who are operatives within the Democrat Party really talking about this, which I don't think. I know that they're trying to establish themselves as the legitimate government for all intents and purposes. Again, Taliban really is. And it seems sort of like folly, and I get a little bit of Sid Blumenthal, Libya, let's go and rebuild a vibe from this story. Does that make sense? I get a weird vibe from it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a shame we don't have 20 years of veterans who have served in Afghanistan on any given day, has forgotten more about Afghanistan than these pencil neck Twitter handles out there bloviating about their mastery of world affairs and the security environment over there and what the operational realities are on the ground, because one of their latte sipping bubbas told them these are the talking points, and off they go. I mean, we literally have thousands and thousands of real Americans who've come back, some of them wounded permanently, all of them having seen a dark side of humanity. They know more about this. And we talked about this before. The natural state of Afghanistan is tribalism and warlordism. There's going to be a lot of forces coming from the outside and active on the inside, pulling it in different directions. The people in the Panjshir Valley, they could hold out for a long time. But what we're seeing now is there's going to definitely be terrorist organizations, radical organizations, and they're going to be anti-American. I mean, even our Afghan partners, as it chokes me to say, are saying pretty anti-American things, and they're very smooth press interactions. And my guess is the completely corrupt and pointless organization known as the United Nations will give them that seat. And my guess is that all of the PhDs of the world will bend over and say, well, yep, this is okay. And off we go. But we're going to have a lot of people pulling this in different directions. We're never really going to get to the truth of why our material was left behind and where did it end up until it's too late. And how we've enabled and emboldened aggressors. I mean, how long before Iran and its minions around the region do something to push back against Israel? We're not going to be worried about whether Joe Biden was asleep in that meeting. We're going to be worried about whether the enemies of Israel now think that they stand alone, that we don't have their back.
Yeah, goodness. There's so much, a lot here. One last quick question, going from Afghanistan to looking at now, Asia, the whole story about the Havana syndrome and the attack that, like that sonic attack that apparently had delayed the vice president's plane out there last week. I wanted to get your thoughts on this because this is where I will completely admit, I will happily put on a tinfoil hat and think it's the CCP and they're targeting people. They and the Russians are probably sharing some kind of tech to this point, and it totally makes sense. It's weird, but everyone has the exact same symptoms, and it's just odd. I just wanted to get your quick thoughts on that story. We're running out of time, sadly.
Well, I mean, the Russians had no problem poisoning their opponents pretty openly for a time, and the Chinese didn't have a problem poisoning the world pretty openly for the last 2 years. So this is a sort of a nicer version of the harassment that they engage in. I have no doubt whatsoever that there's all kinds of harassment that goes on, aimed at the technology that you carry, but also at your level of alertness and ability to conduct your meetings and stuff like that. This is just what bad guys do. They don't have any rules. Their only rule is they win, we lose. And we got to sober up to that and push back against them and maybe do a little bit of this back to them.
Ooh, I would like that. Yeah, that we could do that. Yeah, we could use some, but we could definitely do that back. I mean, especially if that's, I guess we're going to do, we already have these like harassment campaigns that we do back and forth to each other anyway. So
translate really Joy Behar into Chinese and make them listen 24/7.
Are you in my head? Because I'm literally thinking this. I'm not even kidding. That's Stephen Yates at YatesComs on Twitter. Stephen, always appreciate you. Good to see you, my friend. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
Of course.